Thick smoke from the central hearth rises toward the high vaulted ceiling of the longhouse in the Onondaga settlement. The deep silence of the night is broken only by the crackling of logs and the muffled footsteps of the elders. Tianogan clutches a belt made of purple shells, symbolizing the impending breakup of the political alliance. Dozens of eyes are fixed on him, awaiting a word capable of altering the balance of power across the entire continent. It is in these very moments, in the shadows of the forests, that the fate of vast territories, from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic coast, is being decided. You have no idea what hidden mechanisms govern the politics of indigenous peoples long before the emergence of European states. What I am about to reveal will completely overturn your understanding of diplomacy and government. The hidden truth is that the most complex political decisions were made not by the will of a single ruler, but through a unique system of consensus building. This secret of social organization remained in the shadows for a long time, even though it was precisely this system that shaped the political thought of an entire region. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how the true democracy of the forests worked? Today, we'll examine the structure of the historic Haudenosaunee Confederacy Council and trace, step by step, the path to their swiftest political decisions. You'll learn the exact number of stages in the deliberation process and the strict rules that granted voting rights to specific groups of people. We'll take this journey alongside the outstanding diplomat Tianogan, whose strategic mind helped the people navigate between two colonial empires. You'll witness a real historical event in which a fateful decision was made in just one night, thanks to a flawless legal framework. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn why this system of government is considered one of the first forms of representative democracy on the continent. The concept of the separation of powers existed in the forests of North America hundreds of years before the emergence of European constitutions. The historical tradition of the Haudenosaunee was based on a code of oral laws that governed every action within the vast confederacy of 5 nations. Unlike the absolute monarchies of that time, no one here had the right to make unilateral decisions or impose their will by force. Each community retained autonomy in its internal affairs, delegating decisions on external matters to a general council of elders. This legal framework created incredible political stability, allowing the vast confederation to function as a single, well-coordinated mechanism. At the heart of this system lay the principle of full consensus, which precluded the suppression of the minority by the majority. If even one representative disagreed with the general direction, the discussion continued until a compromise was reached. This approach required immense patience and outstanding oratory skills from every participant in the assembly. From an early age, Tianogan mastered this art of persuasion by observing the work of his clan's senior diplomats. He understood that a leader's true strength lies not in a loud voice, but in the ability to weave diverse opinions into a single strong thread. The political alliance united the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca peoples into a single secure territory. The borders of this alliance stretched for hundreds of kilometers, encompassing the vast forests and waterways of what are now the states of New York and Pennsylvania. Within this territory, strict laws of hospitality and mutual aid were in effect, precluding any internal strife. An external threat was automatically perceived as an attack on the entire alliance, requiring the immediate convening of a general council. It was precisely this structure that allowed them to dominate the region for decades, serving as the primary trading and political partner for European colonists. The position of council representative was not passed down directly from father to son. Leaders were elected based on their personal qualities, wisdom, ability to compromise, and knowledge of historical precedents. The process of selecting a new representative could take several months, during which the candidate was thoroughly scrutinized from all angles. Any elected leader could be stripped of his status if his actions began to conflict with the interests of the community. Tianogan earned his place through his impeccable reputation and his ability to find a way out of even the most intractable political crises. Wampums made from cylindrical shells were used to preserve the memory of decisions made. These patterns served as a substitute for writing and functioned as official documents, recording treaties, boundaries, and trade agreements. Reading wampums was a specialized art, requiring a perfect understanding of historical context and symbolic language. Tianogan was considered one of the finest readers of his time, capable of reproducing verbatim the terms of agreements made many years earlier. When speaking at councils, he often drew upon these archives to remind allies of their ancient obligations. The very structure of the political space was deeply symbolic and reflected the idea of absolute equality. No people had the right to elevate themselves above another, although each fulfilled its strictly defined functions. The Onondaga tribe served as guardians of the central fire, providing the site for general assemblies. The main longhouse stood on their lands, where delegations from all corners of the Confederacy gathered. It was there, at the heart of the Confederacy, that Tayanagan was to take part in the most rapid and intense council of 1753. European officials often failed to understand this complex and multi-layered structure of authority. They tried to bribe or win over individual leaders, believing that these leaders held absolute power. Tayanagan had to spend a great deal of time explaining the principles of collective consensus to foreigners. He politely but firmly rejected any proposals for division, emphasizing the inviolability of the great law of peace. This diplomatic armor made the Confederacy impervious to standard methods of colonial division. It would be very interesting to hear your perspective on these ancient laws of consensus. What do you think of a system where a decision is not made until absolutely all participants agree to it? Do you agree that this approach is fairer than the modern rule of simple majority? Please share your thoughts in the comments, as every opinion is valuable to our historical research. In the meantime, let's move on to the most interesting part and examine the architecture of the space where the fates of nations were decided. The longhouse was not merely a structure made of wooden frames and bark, but the physical embodiment of the entire state. It could reach a length of over 30 meters, housing dozens of related families under one roof. The interior was divided into equal compartments, arranged opposite one another along a central corridor. This symmetry fostered a daily practice of equality, where no one held a dominant position over their neighbors. In the center of the longhouse were hearths, each of which provided warmth for the two families living opposite it. These fires served not only for cooking and heating during the harsh winters of the Northeast. They were a symbol of political unity, just as the central fire of the Onondaga united all 5 nations. Tayanagan grew up in this environment, absorbing from childhood the understanding that the common well-being depended on everyone's efforts. He witnessed how decisions regarding household matters were made through long, calm discussions by the evening fire. Every aspect of this structure was thought out, down to the smallest detail, and carried deep diplomatic significance. Tayanagan, representing his elder brothers, had the right to be the first to express his people's position on key issues. This privilege required him to exercise the utmost responsibility and precision in his wording. Any careless word could bring negotiations to a standstill, so his speeches were always characterized by precision. The interior of the longhouse, with its high vaults and perfect acoustics, lent each word special significance. The ventilation system in these buildings deserves special mention as an example of precise engineering. The openings in the roof not only vented smoke, but also ensured a constant circulation of fresh air. During long political councils, when hundreds of people gathered indoors, this was of critical importance. Fresh air helped participants maintain mental clarity and physical alertness for many hours. Diplomats could conduct complex negotiations all night long, without suffering from stuffiness or a lack of oxygen. The outer walls of the longhouse had no windows, which protected the interior from harsh weather conditions. In winter, when temperatures dropped to extreme lows, a comfortable microclimate was maintained inside. This made it possible to hold councils at any time of year, regardless of the whims of nature. Tayanagan often embarked on diplomatic journeys during the cold season, using the thick snow cover to travel quickly. Upon arriving at his destination, he found reliable shelter and a warm space within the longhouse to begin discussions. The protective palisade surrounding large settlements was also part of this architectural philosophy. It consisted of several rows of tall logs and served as a reliable barrier against external threats. But this barrier also had psychological significance, clearly separating the realm of law from the realm of uncertainty. Upon entering through the palisade gates, any guest was required to abide by the rules of peaceful coexistence. Tayanagan repeatedly met foreign delegations at these gates, explaining to them the protocol for behavior within. Every detail of this system worked to create the ideal setting for the collective mind. The longhouse was not merely a backdrop for historical events, but a full-fledged participant in them. But who exactly had the right to speak under these arches and steer the course of the discussion? Whose voice could halt a military campaign or give the green light to begin a confrontation? In the next chapter, you'll learn about the hidden power without whose approval no leader could speak. A secret passed down from generation to generation reveals the true balance of power in Haudenosaunee society. Contrary to European notions of patriarchy, the full extent of political power here emanated from women. The clan mothers held absolute authority to appoint and remove any council member from office. They were the ones who owned the land, controlled the resources, and preserved the ancestral names that were passed down to political leaders. Despite his immense authority, Haudenosaunee was accountable to the elder women of his wolf clan. The process of selecting a new leader began behind closed doors, where only the women of the clan gathered. They discussed the candidates, evaluating their composure, ability to listen, and commitment to the community. Aggressiveness was considered a disqualifying factor for the position of civil governor or diplomat. The clan mothers sought a person capable of keeping a cool head during the most acute crises. Haudenosaunee candidacy was approved precisely because of his outstanding analytical mind and boundless patience. The uniqueness of the system lay in the fact that women held the exclusive right to veto military actions. Without their direct approval, no unit could officially set out on a military campaign. Since the women controlled food and equipment supplies, they could simply refuse to supply those setting out. Haudenosaunee repeatedly encountered situations where the ambitions of young delegates were dashed by the firm refusal of the clan mothers. This system served as a powerful safeguard against senseless conflicts and the waste of human resources. Clan mothers also made key decisions regarding the fate of prisoners and diplomatic hostages. They could spare their lives by accepting them into their family as a replacement for a lost relative. This practice helped offset demographic losses and integrate outsiders into Haudenosaunee society. The adoption process was legally sound, and the new member of the community received all the rights of a full-fledged citizen. Haudenosaunee supported this tradition, seeing it as a strategic tool for strengthening the nation's population. European diplomats long ignored this female factor, committing serious political blunders. They attempted to sign treaties exclusively with men, offering them valuable gifts and empty promises. It took Haudenosaunee considerable effort to explain to officials in New York that without the mother's consent, these documents were null and void. The British were shocked to realize that the fate of their colonial ambitions depended on the decisions of women. This realization completely shifted the focus of diplomatic pressure in the mid-18th century. Women were also present at the Grand Councils as extremely attentive observers. They did not deliver public speeches by the central fire, but they monitored every word spoken. If a representative began to deviate from the course agreed upon by the clan, they could halt the session. Their quiet presence in the shadows of the longhouse had a tremendous impact on the atmosphere of the negotiations. Haudenosaunee always felt this invisible wall of strict control and support behind him. The clan system was common to all 5 nations, creating a complex network of kinship ties. A member of the Turtle Clan of the Mohawk people was considered a brother to a member of the Turtle Clan of the Seneca people. These horizontal ties made full-scale conflict within the Confederacy virtually impossible. Mothers from different nations maintained constant contact, coordinating a common political agenda. It was their solidarity that helped keep the vast alliance from falling apart under pressure from external forces. The true strength of the Haudenosaunee lay not in weapons, but in this balance of feminine and masculine influence. No significant event could begin without upholding this ancient social equilibrium. But how exactly was the discussion process initiated when the time for major diplomacy arrived? What physical challenges did the delegates have to overcome just to reach the negotiating site? The next chapter will reveal the details of the arduous journey that led all the leaders to the central fire. Are you ready for the shocking truth about what the actual transportation system of 18th century North America looked like? To convene the Great Council, diplomats had to travel hundreds of kilometers through dense forests and across raging rivers. The Confederacy maintained an extensive network of secret trails, kept in perfect condition. These routes were cleared of fallen trees, and canoes were always hidden at the river crossings. Haudenosaunee often used these paths, traveling at a speed that was incredible for a diplomat of his age. The journey from the Mohawk capital to Onondaga took about 5 days of brisk walking. The delegations traveled in small groups, maintaining absolute silence so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Each member of the party carried a minimal supply of provisions, relying on their own skills and the hospitality of their allies. Overnight stays were organized in pre-arranged, hidden camps where a small fire could be lit. During these stops, Haudenosaunee continued to instruct the future leaders, preparing them for the upcoming debates. The communication system between the nations operated at a speed that astonished many European observers. Messengers delivering invitations to the council could run up to 150 kilometers in a single day. They carried special summons wampums, which served as an official mandate and confirmed the urgency of the gathering. Upon receiving such a wampum, a nation was obligated to immediately form a delegation and send it on its way. Haudenosaunee himself had served as such a runner in his youth, having thoroughly studied the geography of the entire vast confederacy. Upon approaching the capital of Onondaga, a strict protocol known as the Edge of the Forest Ritual was observed. The delegation was not permitted to simply enter the settlement. It was required to stop at the edge of the forest and light a welcoming fire. Upon seeing the smoke, the hosts would send their representatives to meet the delegation and conduct the welcoming ceremony. This ritual served as a guarantee of peaceful intentions and a reliable defense against a sudden attack. Haudenosaunee always treated this tradition with special reverence, showing respect for the custodians of the central fire. Accommodating the delegations within the settlement required complex logistics on the part of the host. The Onondaga had to provide hundreds of guests with lodging, food, and comfortable working conditions. Food supplies for such events were gathered and set aside by the clan mothers many months in advance. A steady supply ensured that the council would not be interrupted due to a simple lack of resources. Haudenosaunee highly valued this organization, knowing that an empty stomach makes for a very poor advisor in diplomacy. A few hours before the main council began, preliminary behind-the-scenes meetings were held. Leaders of various nations exchanged news, testing the waters for future large-scale discussions. In this informal setting, preliminary agreements on the most complex issues were often reached. Haudenosaunee was an unrivaled master of such conversations, skillfully steering his opponent's opinions in the right direction. His tent was always a magnet for those seeking compromise before the official debates began. Gathered together, the delegates represented a formidable political force, ready to change the course of history. Inside the longhouse, everything was already in place for the start of an extremely complex and multi-layered diplomatic dance. But how exactly did the debates unfold when the very survival of entire nations was at stake? In the next chapter, you'll learn about the incredible challenges Haudenosaunee faced throughout his career. Now you'll understand how one man was able to outmaneuver an entire colonial empire. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that Native American diplomacy was more complex than a game of European chess. Haudenosaunee, whom the British respectfully called King Hendrik, was the chief architect of Mohawk foreign policy in the mid-18th century. His task was to walk a fine line between the interests of the British Crown and the French Empire. Both sides desperately tried to win the Confederacy over to their side, promising incredible economic benefits. But the seasoned leader understood that any one-sided alliance would lead to the inevitable absorption of his people. Haudenosaunee strategy was based on maintaining strict neutrality and exploiting the conflicts among the Europeans. He masterfully conducted negotiations in Albany, demanding that the British respect territorial boundaries and engage in fair trade. At the same time, he sent envoys to the French in Montreal, signaling his willingness to shift his political alignment. This double game forced the colonial administrations to constantly compete for the favor of the Haudenosaunee. Thanks to this maneuvering, the Confederacy secured the best goods, valuable resources, and political concessions for decades. The foundation of relations with New York was the Chain of Covenant Treaty, which symbolized a strong silver alliance. Silver required constant polishing. Otherwise, it could quickly tarnish and lose its value. This metaphor signified the need for regular meetings and the reaffirmation of mutual obligations between the parties. Haudenosaunee personally ensured that the British did not forget to polish this chain, demanding respect and gifts from them. When governors began to act arrogantly, he immediately threatened to sever all contact. However, by the early 1750s, the situation began to deteriorate rapidly due to the colonists' land schemes. British traders and officials began to illegally seize Mohawk lands, completely ignoring the terms of the treaties. The elders' complaints went unanswered, and the silver chain of the covenant began to rust rapidly. Haudenosaunee found himself in an extremely difficult position. His people demanded decisive action, while the British were blatantly stalling. He understood that the Confederacy had reached a critical juncture, requiring an immediate and radical diplomatic move. French influence was also beginning to grow at this time. posing a threat of division within the Confederacy itself. Missionaries were actively working in the settlements, trying to persuade individual families to move closer to Montreal's northern borders. Tiohtià:ke had to draw on all his immense authority to prevent communities from migrating into foreign territories. He addressed dozens of local councils, repeatedly emphasizing the value of political unity and independence. This internal diplomacy took no less of a toll on him than direct negotiations with European governors. By 1753, the Mohawks' patience had run out, and they demanded an immediate special meeting of the Confederacy Council. The problem of illegal land seizures had become unbearable, threatening the very existence of the Eastern Gateway. Tiohtià:ke realized that routine diplomatic complaints were no longer effective, and that an unprecedented strategic move was needed. He decided to employ a radical strategy and publicly sever the chain of covenant to shock the colonists. But such a large-scale move required prior agreement from all members of the Great Alliance. He had to convince the other 4 nations to support this extremely risky and drastic diplomatic maneuver. If it failed, the Mohawks would be left to face the enraged and powerful British administration alone. Tiohtià:ke began meticulous preparations for the council, gathering evidence of all the violations committed by New York officials. He sent trusted runners to the Seneca and Onondaga elders to lay the groundwork for his grand presentation. His entire reputation, built up over many years, was on the line for this single decisive moment. Tension mounted with each passing day, until all the delegations gathered around the central fire in the longhouse. This was not just an ordinary meeting, but an event capable of bringing down the entire colonial system of relations. To understand exactly how Tiohtià:ke put this plan into action, we need to examine the mechanics of the debates themselves. How could 5 different peoples reach a single, radical conclusion without pressure or coercion? The following chapter will reveal, step by step, the process behind this pivotal historical decision. Guess how long it took to create the perfect algorithm for collective government decision-making? It took the Haudenosaunee centuries of continuous political trial and error to develop this 3-stage system of debate. The main rule was strict order of speaking. No one was allowed to interrupt a speaker or shout out from their seat. Discussion of any issue, whether border defense or a trade agreement, went through the most rigorous filters. Tiohtià:ke, as a representative of the elder brothers, was a key figure in the first stage of this complex political mechanism. The first stage of the discussion always began with the elder brothers, the Mohawk and Seneca. They were the ones who initiated the discussion by raising a specific issue and proposing their own solution. Delegates from these 2 nations discussed the matter in detail among themselves until they reached a unified, balanced consensus. At this point, the other council members maintained absolute silence, listening with the utmost attention to the arguments. Tiohtià:ke brilliantly handled the task of formulating the initial thesis, setting the necessary direction for the entire subsequent discussion. This back-and-forth exchange of arguments could go on for days until both sides reached a common ground. Emotions were strictly controlled. Raising one's voice was considered a sign of incredible weakness and a lack of logic. Tiohtià:ke could listen to harsh criticism for hours without changing his expression, calmly preparing new counter-arguments. The process demanded immense respect for one's opponent, for everyone understood that without mutual consent, the matter would not move forward. Only when the 4 nations reached full and unconditional agreement was the issue passed on to the 3rd and final stage. The 3rd stage belonged exclusively to the Onondaga people, the permanent guardians of the Central Fire and arbiters of the Confederacy. They had closely followed the course of all previous debates, but had not intervened until this decisive moment. Their task was to assess whether the decision fully complied with the great law of peace and historical traditions. If the Onondaga saw that the consensus violated the alliance's fundamental principles, they had the full right to impose a strict veto. In such a case, the entire discussion process would start over from the beginning, with new introductions and revisions. The precision of this 3-stage procedure reliably protected the alliance from impulsive decisions and the dictatorship of strong leaders. No charismatic authority figure, including Tiohtià:ke himself, could impose his personal will by circumventing the system. Even the most brilliant plan had to pass through the filter of the younger brother's skepticism and the Onondaga's wisdom. This political thoroughness often irritated the Europeans, who constantly demanded immediate responses to their ultimatums. But it was precisely this that preserved the Confederacy's independence throughout many difficult decades of constant contact. The mechanism of debate ran like clockwork, But even it was put to incredible tests during acute moments of crisis. On such nights, every word could become a spark capable of igniting a massive continental political conflagration. How did events unfold on that very historic night when the silver chain of the covenant was thrown into the fire? What compelled the council to break from its unhurried rhythm and make a lightning-fast yet measured decision? Below, you'll learn the details of this incredible diplomatic breakthrough and the culmination of the tension. The secret, one for which people pay thousands, lies in understanding how fateful decisions are made in moments of crisis. In late spring 1753, Tayanaquan and a powerful delegation of Mohawks arrived in New York City with a stern ultimatum. They demanded that British Governor George Clinton cease the seizure of their lands and immediately restore justice. The governor responded with a haughty refusal, catastrophically underestimating the determination of the veteran diplomat and the strength of the Confederacy behind him. This moment served as the trigger that set off a chain reaction which, overnight, changed the history of North America. Upon receiving the refusal, Tayanaquan delivered his famous speech, which has gone down in the annals of world colonial diplomacy. He stated directly and openly to the governor that from that moment on, the old treaty of the Chain of the Covenant was completely severed. The fire between us has gone out. These heavy words struck the British officials like a bolt from the blue. The Mohawks immediately left the city, leaving the colonial administration in a state of deep shock and utter bewilderment. But now Tayanaquan faced the most difficult task, legitimizing his unprecedented move at the Great Council of Haudenosaunee. Tayanaquan took his rightful place among his elder brothers, preparing to initiate the first and most crucial stage of the discussion. He unfurled before the participants a belt of wampum beads, attesting to the original terms of the treaty with the British colonists. His voice was steady and firm as he listed each instance of the European settlers' gross boundary violations. He described the governor's arrogance and demonstrated that continuing the alliance would lead to the loss of independence for all the nations. His argument was so thorough and logical that the Seneca elders agreed with the Mohawks' position almost immediately. The matter was passed on to the younger brothers, who found themselves facing an extremely difficult strategic choice. The Oneida and the Cayuga understood that breaking the alliance would cut them off from British supplies of essential goods and food. However, they also realized that the loss of Mohawk lands would inevitably open the way for colonists to invade their own territories. The debate on their side of the campfire lasted several hours, accompanied by quiet but extremely tense whispers. Tayanaquan remained ice-cold, knowing full well that any sign of impatience could destroy the fragile negotiation process. In the middle of the night, the younger brothers delivered their verdict. They fully supported the radical course set by their older brothers. They agreed that protecting their territory was more important than the temporary trade benefits of an alliance with a completely unreliable partner. Now the fate of continental policy depended entirely on the final decision of the guardians of the Central Fire. The Onondaga fell into deep thought, weighing all the risks of this step for the future well-being of the entire Confederacy. The silence in the longhouse became almost palpable, broken only by the steady crackling of burning logs. This tense nighttime council set a unique precedent in the entire long history of Native American diplomacy, an extremely complex political maneuver, one that signified a complete severance of relations with a powerful empire, was approved in just one short night. In a single night, the diplomacy of the forests taught a harsh lesson in statecraft to self-assured European officials. But how exactly were these highly complex decisions recorded so that they could not be revoked or contested the next day? What physical media served as indestructible legal documents in that complex historical era? And in a minute, we'll take a detailed look at the tool that made spoken words practically eternal. You'll learn why the actual weight of seashells was far more important than king's signatures on paper scrolls. What took place behind the scenes of official negotiations often carried far greater significance than the grand speeches of politicians. Europeans mistakenly regarded wampum as mere beads or primitive ornaments, failing to understand their true political and legal role. In reality, it was an extremely complex system for storing information, performing all the functions of a government chancery and archive. The belts were made of small cylindrical beads, skillfully carved from the shells of marine mollusks. This process was incredibly labor-intensive, which made each finished belt an object of the highest political value. During the Night Council of 1753, Tayanaquan did not merely speak words. He masterfully wove them into a new wampum. White beads always symbolized lasting peace, purity of thought, and good intentions in diplomatic relations. Purple beads were used to indicate serious problems, deep conflicts, or a complete breakdown of agreements. By combining these colors, the artisans created unique patterns that the delegates interpreted as precise legal clauses. A belt signifying a broken chain was predominantly purple, with a jagged, broken white line running down the very center. The legal validity of any decision depended on whether it was accompanied by the transfer of the relevant thematic wampum. A word not backed by a belt was considered empty rhetoric and had absolutely no political consequences for the participants. When Haudenosaunee hurled the words about the extinguished fire in the governor's face, he reinforced them with a special heavy belt. This gesture elevated the conflict from an emotional quarrel to an official and irreversible diplomatic rupture. Upon returning to the council, he used different belts to report to his allies on each of his bold moves. For the experienced Haudenosaunee, wampum was the primary tool in his complex struggle against the colonial bureaucracy. The Europeans often tried to manipulate the convoluted texts of paper treaties, taking advantage of the fact that the Native Americans did not use paper. In response, Haudenosaunee would produce old sashes and reproduce verbatim the original, unaltered terms of important agreements. He would point to specific beads, explaining that the British had grossly violated the promises enshrined in that ancient pattern. This irrefutable body of evidence often left colonial officials completely at a loss during official negotiations. Creating a new belt to formalize the Knight Council's decision required the participation of many artisans from different clans. This was yet another level of ensuring consensus, as absolutely everyone had to agree on the final pattern. Each bead was carefully woven in the presence of witnesses who confirmed the accuracy of the political information being encoded. The finished belt became the tangible embodiment of the unwavering will of all 5 nations, united by a common radical decision. It was sent to the Central Onondaga Archive, becoming a new and important chapter in the Confederation's legal history. Having recorded its radical decision in the shells, the Council concluded the most intense phase of its historic work. But how did this nighttime political breakthrough affect the subsequent balance of power across the entire vast continent? How did the consensus of the 5 independent nations manage to force the British Crown itself to change its colonial laws? The decision made during a single tense night in the Onondaga Longhouse triggered a political earthquake in distant London. The British government finally realized that the high-handedness of individual governors was leading to the catastrophic loss of its chief ally. On the eve of an impending geopolitical conflict with France, the empire simply could not afford a confrontation with the Haudenosaunee. This forced the proud crown to make unprecedented concessions and launch large-scale, centralized reforms. In 1754, British authorities urgently convened the Albany Congress in an attempt to salvage the deteriorating situation. Representatives from the 7 colonies gathered in Albany, specifically to appease Haudenosaunee and his numerous allies. It was a unique event in which the fragmented colonies were forced to sit down at the same table due to an Indian ultimatum. Haudenosaunee arrived at the Congress not as a supplicant, but as the absolute dictator of the terms for restoring the political alliance. He was accompanied by 150 delegates from the Confederacy, which clearly demonstrated the absolute monolithic unity of their ranks. He studied with the utmost care how 5 independent nations had managed to create such a strong and effective legal union. The ideas of a confederation, a strict separation of powers, and the pursuit of consensus had a direct influence on his own plan to unite the colonies. Thus, the structure of the Native American Longhouse laid the conceptual foundation for the future American form of government. It is crucial to note that this diplomatic triumph was achieved without the use of weapons or large-scale clashes. The tools of victory were a powerful intellect, knowledge of traditional law, oratorical skill, and exemplary political organization. Haudenosaunee convincingly demonstrated that words, backed by national unity, can be far more effective than brute physical force. He rightfully went down in history as one of the most outstanding statesmen of his time across the entire continent. His rich legacy became a guiding light for subsequent generations of indigenous leaders. This story also completely debunks the myth of the primitiveness of political life in pre-contact and early colonial America. We clearly see an extremely complex system of checks and balances, functioning veto institutions, and multi-level diplomacy. Decisions were not made as a result of chaotic impulses, but through strict regulations and in-depth structural analysis of the situation. The structure of this society largely surpassed that of European monarchies, in terms of the level of protection afforded to the interests of each participant. The democracy of the forests convincingly proved its viability and supreme effectiveness in the face of the imperial machine. Tihanogun's own life ended as grandly and dramatically as his entire career had unfolded. He reaffirmed his loyalty to the restored alliance by siding with the British allies to defend their shared interests. There, while defending the borders of his homeland, this outstanding veteran diplomat and brilliant strategist met his end. But his resounding diplomatic victories and the precedents he established lived on in the unshakable laws of the Confederation. His name remains forever inscribed in bright beads within the patterns of the people's most important historical wampums. This historical episode leads us to the main and most important conclusions about the nature of power and the organization of society. The path that Tihanogun walked with dignity shows how institutions and laws can protect a people during the most trying times. In the final chapter, we will summarize this remarkable system of governance, which was centuries ahead of its time. How the experience of a single tense night forever changed our understanding of the continent's diplomatic history. We now turn to the concluding thoughts of our study and an assessment of this unique historical phenomenon. When looking back at the past, we often fail to notice that true breakthroughs in political thought occurred far from European capitals. The story of Tihanogun and the Haudenosaunee Night Council forever shatters established stereotypes about what a developed state should look like. Their effective system did not require stone palaces or voluminous paper constitutions to maintain ideal order. The strength of their law was based on deep mutual respect, strict adherence to traditions, and each individual's responsibility to the community. It was a living, breathing system of consensus that ensured maximum political justice for all participants. The culmination of Tihanogun's journey is not merely the highly successful resolution of a serious diplomatic crisis. It is direct proof that the institutions of separation of powers and representation functioned brilliantly on the continent, even before its colonization. The principles of the veto and the maintenance of a balance of interest between the senior and junior members of the Confederation. All of this was tested in the forests. Tihanogun and his experienced colleagues taught the colonists a crucial lesson about how to be politically united while remaining distinct. This rich legacy is invisible, but is very firmly woven into the fabric of modern Western political culture. However, unlike modern democracies, the Haudenosaunee system was entirely unfamiliar with the popular winner-takes-all principle. They considered simple majority voting categorically unfair, as it left part of society dissatisfied with the results. Their primary goal was not to defeat an opponent in debate, but to find a wise solution with which absolutely all participants could live. This highest level of political empathy and the pursuit of genuine unity remains an unattainable ideal for many modern states. The Night Council of 1753 served as a brilliant example of how this most complex ideal worked flawlessly in practice. Today, the memory of those dramatic events is carefully preserved not only in academic works, but also in the oral traditions of the indigenous peoples themselves. Wampums, in which the decisions of the great councils are forever encoded, are still carefully passed down from generation to generation. They serve as an important reminder of a time when the fate of the continent was decided in the silence of the longhouse, accompanied by the steady crackling of the fire. This living memory helps the modern Haudenosaunee confidently preserve their national identity in a rapidly changing world. Their laws continue to live on, proving their timeless political relevance and immense wisdom every day. Studying these crucial historical processes allows us to take a completely new look at the development of human society as a whole. We understand that complex and supremely just forms of government can emerge under any geographical and technological conditions. Political wisdom is entirely independent of the presence of printing presses or massive stone administrative buildings. It arises from people's need to live together in harmony, respect one another, and jointly resist any external threats. The history of Tihanogun is the most brilliant and compelling confirmation of this universal social principle. Ultimately, the historic Night Council at Onondaga teaches us the immense value of patience and responsibility in making far-reaching decisions. When the stakes are highest, it is precisely a clear legal framework and a deep respect for the law that effectively prevent disaster. Tihanogun and the elders of the Confederacy demonstrated an incredible level of statesmanship and political responsibility. Their experience is not merely a page from an old history textbook. It is a timely lesson in leadership for all future generations. a lesson that clearly illustrates how to uncompromisingly defend one's interests without losing one's dignity. This story about the power of consensus, complex diplomacy, and the structure of Haudenosaunee society prompts reflection on many important issues. How do you evaluate the system of political decision-making in comparison to modern methods of governance? What topics, historical eras, or specific historical figures would you like to see covered in our next historical analyses? Please share your suggestions in the comments. We carefully read all of your wonderful ideas. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new in-depth explorations of the incredible history of indigenous peoples.